Okay, we'll call the meeting to order for the City of Saratoga Springs on November 10th, 2020 at 6:02 p.m. We're meeting remote due to COVID. I, Jim Miller, the mayor of City of Saratoga Springs, hereby determines that conducting the city council meeting at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, and the County Health Department have all recognized a global pandemic exists related to the new strain of coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic. I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. This written declaration expires 30 days from the date signed. Whew, that's a lot of wind baggage stuff. Okay. Present right now we have Councilman Porter, Councilman Wilden, Councilman Carn. So we do have a quorum at this time. I've asked Councilman Carn to lead us in our prayer or invocation, and Councilman Wilden to lead us in our pledge.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee with gratitude in our hearts for this great city, state, and country we live in. We're grateful for the democratic process that we govern by and the opportunity that we have here to help lead our city. Father, we pray that we'll be directed and guided in our decisions, and that we will do what is best for the majority of the people that we live with and associate with. Father, we pray for peace in our country and unity, and for direction and moving forward, and do so in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public input. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, and comments for subject matter not listed on this agenda. Please be respectful in your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. David, was there any comments sent in?
There was a gentleman that had some public input. Let me see if I can find him in the attendee list. Here we go. His name is Ben Holst.
Okay.
Just 1 minute.
Mayor and Aubrey Charrington also has a hand raised as well.
And
Okay.
can you hear us? Okay.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Are you able to turn on your video as well so the council can see?
I would love to, but it's not giving me the option. Let me see here.
Dave, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, I like to have the video, but I guess we just go with what we have. I don't see a video option.
Let me try this. See if it's giving you a video option now.
Okay. Yep. Now I have a video. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, you want me to get going here? Okay, so hi, I'm Ben. I live here in South Saratoga. So I guess you guys are aware of the issue. I have goats. I called a couple of years ago. I was planning on getting goats in my backyard, so I called the city, asked if they were okay. They said yes. That was about 1.5 years ago. I got small miniature goats that are size of about like medium-sized dogs. They were great. I have a little spiel here, I guess. They're cute, they're funny, they're my buddies, they have their own little personalities, they didn't smell, they didn't make any noise. My neighbors loved them. I had a next door neighbor that had 3 little girls they'd look out the stairwell every morning from their window, looking for the goats. They'd always keep tabs on them, come over, they would feed them, they would ask about goat questions. The parents told me when I first got them, we love this, much better than dogs. We're so happy that you got these. Had 2 other different sets of neighbor kids would come over and ask to say hi to the goats, try to feed them. I'd use it as an educational opportunity as they would ask me questions like, hey, why are they running away? Why are they doing this? And it was good education for the youngsters. Had another neighbor behind me who was doing weeds in his backyard one spring morning. He had backed up his truck all the way into his backyard, filling it full of stuff. I was like, what are you doing? Throw that over my fence. These guys would love it. He said, are you serious? This will save me a trip down to the Orem Green Waste facility. Another neighbor yeah, go ahead. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, another neighbor who I didn't even think cared about the goats, maybe didn't like them, actually saved their Christmas tree for me last year. So why I'm here. So the other week I woke up to animal control knocking on my door, telling me that I'm in violation of having goats. Pretty much Officer Beck said, a goat is a farm animal. I asked, I wasn't too familiar, is a dog a farm animal? He said, no, a dog is a dog and a goat is a goat. Well, I agree that a dog is a dog and a goat is a goat. I'm not sure what he was getting at. So I got in touch with David Johnson, who was kind enough to send me the code that I'm in violation of. Apparently in 19.02.02, it says, as used in this Title 101, farm animals mean animals kept or raised primarily for incidental to livestock or agricultural operations, which are grouped into the following categories. The backyard goats, to me in this definition, they're not farm animals, they're pets. I'm not raising them for livestock or agricultural operations. They eat my weeds, they fertilize my backyard, enhance my soil, which here in Saratoga, we know we desperately need to be able to grow some decent food. I don't spray Roundup, which we all know the dangers of Roundup. Like my neighbors, I don't bring in artificial topsoil, I make it all here. The goats give me and my family love, affection, and joy, and now the city is trying to take them away. So I guess here we are. What is my request? I guess, what exactly is the city code? Why is it against code? How did it get there? Is it really against code? What can we do to make this, I mean, of all places, we're here in Saratoga Springs. I'm not sure why it wouldn't be accepted, or if it is, seems like there's certain animals that aren't. And I guess, yeah, that's my public comment.
Okay. Mark, do you have?
Mayor, actually, we have Dave Stroud on. I know they've been working with them from an animal control standpoint. It's a compliance issue. And again, we'd be more than happy to continue the conversation. But again, at this point, it's been largely handled by animal control up to this point. Stroud, do you have anything that you could add? I apologize. I'm a little bit not aware of the full situation of where we're at.
Mark, I'm sorry to interject. So I've primarily been taking the lead on this, and the 2 main things with it are even dogs. The code does not allow for more than 4 dogs, I believe, and 5 cat or 4 dog. It's either 4 dogs and 3 cats, or 3 cats and 4 dogs. Anyways, and also it doesn't allow for farm animals. So even if the code did allow for goats, he would still be exceeding the number of animals that are permitted. And so there's a couple things. Those are the 2 main things. Now, it's not something, or it's something that you could consider, have staff come back with recommendations. But anyways, that's kind of where that's sitting.
Stroud? And he froze up on us.
Mayor, it's just kind of a point of order. We generally don't respond when we receive public comment. We'd be happy to continue the conversation at another point. And so typically, if this is an item you want us to bring back, we could do that, or you could direct us to just continue to work with the with I believe Ben on the issue.
Okay, yeah, if you continue to work with Ben, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, and there was one more for public comment.
Let me see. I believe we had Aubrey Charrington had her hand raised. So let's see. Aubrey, was there a public comment that you wanted to make? I've made it so that you can speak now if there's public comment you wanted to make. I'm not getting a response.
Okay.
Let me see if there's anyone else for you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any other individuals who've raised their hand or sent emails for public comment.
Okay, perfect. With that, I will close the public input at this time. And we have the Youth Council introduction and oath of office.
Yes, let me try to get a Brady Bunch group of Youth Council so they can be viewed. Just one moment.
While he's doing that, we're going to jump after this down to the business items. Some of our planning commissioners have sat through most of this stuff and are aware of it. So I'd like to reappoint them so they can only hear it once instead of twice this week.
Mayor, would you just like to take a motion and approve business item 1 at this point?
Yeah, we can do that. Well, David's doing that. So I would, business item 1 is the Planning Commission appointments, reappointing Ken Kilgore and Bryce McConkey, Resolution R20-42. Ken has filled 1 term. This would be his 2nd term. Bryce stepped in and filled in for somebody who needed to resign early from the appointment. I've talked with Stroud and his team. They're very pleased with the work they're doing and their knowledge of the projects and things going on. And the Planning Commission was in favor of reappointing them. So I bring them to the council tonight and would entertain a motion to reappoint Ken Kilgore and Bryce McConkey.
So made.
I have a first from
Second.
Councilman Porter, second from Councilman Carn. Any further discussion? Porter?
No, just Mayor, coming from Planning Commission, I don't know Bryce very well, but I know Ken. I know Ken spends a lot of time going into those meetings, does a lot of preparation. You can tell by his preparation that he takes that job very serious, and I'm glad he's willing to do it again.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I will do roll call. Porter,
Aye.
Wilden,
Aye.
Carn,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I've got our staff member, Rochelle Mosley, who, Rochelle, are you able to turn on your camera? And
I can turn on my camera.
will you just name for me the different youth council members and I will give them access to be able to.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I can start with the board. Tyler Hudson.
Okay, so let's just do one at a time.
Okay.
Oops, let's see.
I'm getting a lot of texts from them. Some of them, it says they're having trouble, so.
Okay, let's try this. Okay, who else?
Adeline Jensen.
Adeline Jensen, okay. We're just gonna put them up here so you can see them. So youth council, please, as you get access, please just turn on your cameras for the mayor. Who else?
Megan Easley.
Megan, okay. All right.
Ready?
now-
Chase Durham.
Chase. Okay,
Emma Jex.
Okay.
Lizzie Bloomquist,
Lizzie. Okay.
Aubrey Prestwich,
Aubrey. Okay.
Isabella Lutke,
Okay.
Gracie Jarrett. It may say Grace Lynn Jarrett.
Okay.
Danielle Peterson,
Yeah. Okay.
Alicia McGarry,
Alicia. Okay.
Katie Barch,
Katie.
Mercedes Densley,
Okay.
Emily Durant,
Okay.
Haley Palfreyman,
Okay. Haley. All right.
Rory Young,
Rory. Got a lot of council this year.
Oh, we have a huge council. I even had 3 more send me applications today. So Mallory Carden,
Mallory. Okay.
Jordan Perry,
Jordan. Okay.
Logan Lundgren,
Logan. All right.
Morrison Cheney,
Morrison. All right.
Oscar Jensen, Ozkar,
Z. Okay. Oscar. There he is. All right.
Miles Nelson,
Miles. Okay. All right.
Hudson Harrison,
Hudson. Dashing young man. Okay.
The next one is Jake Hudson, but he's on there with Tyler. I can see both of them, so he's already on there. Lindsay Palfreyman, and I believe she's going to get on with Haley, so don't worry about that one. Kendra Allred,
How does Haley spell her name? Because it didn't come up earlier.
Hailey, and she's on there. So,
All right.
and then Kendra is Kendrah.
Kendra. Kendrah. Okay.
Madeline, or maybe Madeline, I'm not sure how she says it. Merrill, Merrell.
All right.
Bryson Lundgren,
Jason. All right. Okay.
and then let me tell you these new ones that we got today. Hang on, they're on here somewhere. Jackson Moss.
Jackson Moss. All right.
Oh, and I do believe the one that said she was trying to get on earlier was Aubrey. Was it Aubrey that was looking to make a public comment? I think she is part of the youth council. I think she may have just been trying to get on.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. I think that's every.
that's a
Oh.
lot of us, yes.
Here in council, here is your Brady Bunch Youth Council for you. Everybody wants to wave hello.
Hi, guys. Everybody wave.
David, I'm trying to send the mayor the oath of office. Give us just one more second. If we could you just talk a little bit about the leadership for a moment while I get that to the mayor? Thank you.
Yes, in fact, I will introduce the leadership. And guys, if you will please unmute when I say your name and just maybe tell what grade you're in and how long you've served on the youth council, and just so we can put a face to a name. Tyler Hudson is our mayor this year.
Hi, everybody. I'm in 12th grade, and this is my 4th year.
Thanks, Tyler. Addie Jensen. Where's Addie? She was on there. Addie Jensen is our mayor pro tem.
I'm Addie, and I'm in 11th grade, and this is going to be my 3rd year.
Addie. Megan Easley, there's Megan. She is our secretary this year.
I'm Megan Easley. I'm a junior, and this is my 2nd year on youth council.
Thanks, Megan. Chase. Chase is going to become my best friend because he is our volunteer coordinator. He's going to make sure these kids, when they sign up for something, that they actually show up.
Yeah, I'm a 10th grader, and this is my first year on the council.
Thanks, Chase. And then Emma Jacks. Did I see Emma? Emma, there you are. Hi, Emma. And she is our timekeeper. She keeps us on time.
Indeed. I'm Emma Jex. I'm going to be an 11th grader, and this is my 1st year.
Thanks, Emma. So that is our board for this year. And then we have the other 25 or so kids serving on the council.
That's great. Thank you. I wish this year wasn't remote due to circumstances, because in the years past, we've been able to have members of the youth board run a meeting for us and with us to kind of get a feel for how things work up on the dais and that. And as we get back into meetings, we'd love to invite you to come participate with the council and do that to kind of get a different understanding and perspective on how things run within the city. But I appreciate your willingness to serve and your interest in being involved in the community. We'll do the oath of office. So what we'll do is just have you sit instead of stand, but raise your right hand and then repeat after me. I, your name. Anybody?
All of you are on mute.
Yeah.
Guys, you have to take it off mute and we'll start one more time.
Yeah.
Wait, do we want everybody off mute?
Oh, maybe not. How do you want to do that, David?
Should we just follow along with it being on mute?
Might be good.
Okay,
Yeah,
put them
maybe
on
just
mute and we'll just pretend we heard you. Say your name.
Just let the mayor be verbal.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's all yours, Tyler.
Okay.
Okay.
You're doing it with me, Jake.
I state your name.
I, Tyler Hudson,
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support,
do solemnly swear and
or affirm
affirm that I will
that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution
obey and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office with fidelity.
the duties of my office with fidelity.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome. And we do appreciate it. And like I said, I look forward to when we can be in person. Would love to have you come in and participate with the council running a meeting. And that, so thank you. Any comments from the council members?
Mayor, just if someone could just tell me what the youth council does, because I'm not aware, being the new guy. It's great there's so many of them, but I don't know what they're going to do.
Rochelle?
I would love to tell you, but I would like maybe some of these guys to tell you what they do. Tyler, would you take just a minute and tell some of the things you've been involved in? And then Addie, would you please just tell a couple of things that we're looking forward to doing?
So the youth council plans and executes activities. So what we've done in the past is the splash bash, the Christmas tree lighting, the Easter egg hunt, and the fall festival, and then just other activities that the city needs help with. We meet every month and talk about that. We also go up to Legislative Day every year in January. This year, we've kept doing those activities with the challenge of COVID, and we had a great turnout at the fall festival. It's been really cool, everybody working together during this pandemic. I've loved it serving 4 years.
Anyone else with more to add to it or their experience?
Go ahead, Addie. If you've got something you can tell them more about, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's just a really great experience and it's awesome. I've loved these past 3 years and continuing into this year, being able to be a little part of this, like helping run the activities in this community and helping serve this community. And I'm looking forward to this year, just as well as everyone else on the council and helping serve our community even through this rough time.
Addie, you're also our junior Miss Saratoga Springs, correct?
Yes, I am.
Perfect.
Mayor, I just wanted to say, I've had an opportunity to interact with some of these kids, at least the ones I've done it for a few years now. Like you said, they go to Legislative Day, where the cities also attend and meet with their legislators. And so I've been able to hear some of these guys. There's usually a topic debate that they'll do up at that Legislative Day. So that's always interesting to see the youth perspective on some of the issues facing cities and towns in our state. And then to Councilman Karn's question, pretty much anytime you see youth or young adults helping out at the city events dressed as a giant blue bird, which is you guys are brave to get in there. I can't imagine that it smells too great after a long sweaty splash day, but that's usually the youth council that participates in those activities. So
I'd just like to say thank you for volunteering. I think a lot of adults should follow your example. There's a lot of needs and volunteers, or a lot of needs for volunteers in the city. So if everyone were like you, we'd be in phenomenal shape. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Not like Chris, like our youth council, not Councilman Porter.
So do you guys have any questions for the council? If not, welcome. We're grateful again for your willingness to serve and be part of the community.
All right, youth council, so that the mayor and the council can move on with the meeting. You're welcome to stay on the meeting. Just make sure you turn off your videos and mute your microphones. You're also welcome to exit the meeting as well. So thank you, everyone.
you told them they could leave, David, and all of a sudden our participation's dropping through the floor.
You know what? Actually, because the youth council was on, we've had our most YouTube views ever, a whole 9 people at one time.
I'll admit I'm running that as well, so 8.
So that means Councilman Karn has 3 screens up right now.
Okay. Let's see. Like I said, we'll come back to reports. We'll go to the public hearing for fiscal year 2020 and 2021.
Hey, Mayor, we're going to do the work session stuff.
Oh, yes. Well, let's do public hearing 1 and then the amendments, and then we'll go back up to that.
Okay.
Mayor, thank you very much. I believe we have Spencer Quain online. Spencer, there you go. Go ahead, Spencer.
So as in the agenda, we have a bunch of budget amendments forward. Most of them are for the various funds associated with public works, but we also have a good amount in the general fund as well. So do we have any questions from the council on them?
I asked my questions earlier today, so I'm prepared to move forward. But
Yeah, I've reviewed this with staff as well. I'm okay.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I will move.
Oh, sorry, we can't do a motion yet. It's public hearing. Sorry, we'll open this up for public hearing. David, was there any public comments sent in on the amendments?
No, not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen anyone register or raise their hand during the meeting for that.
Perfect. Sorry to interrupt. Now I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve public hearing 1, resolution R20-45 dated today.
Second.
I have a first from Councilman Wilden, a second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion? Roll call. Karn,
Aye.
Wilden,
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We will jump back up to the mixed use zones, artificial turf and canal burial.
Mayor, it looks like Councilman Podeska and McComber are not present. Do you want to still carry on with this? Are they going to be at the meeting just later, or are they excused?
I haven't heard, but these are two items that were near to them. I would say I would suggest we postpone them until a meeting when they can be here.
Okay.
I support that.
Okay. Thank you for being prepared, David, and we'll get that onto the next scheduled meeting.
No problem. We'll make the change on our calendar.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything, David, pressing to talk about that canal burial?
We do have a development, the Hadco development, up on North Redwood there on the east side. Yeah, that's kind of what spurred this. And you can see in the, I don't know how far you want to go.
You got to turn your camera off.
The other two are not present, but I guess who turned off?
David, can you turn your camera off? We can't hear you.
David, your connection is going in and out, so.
Okay. Councilmember Karn, I guess it'd be up to you guys with the other two not present, but we do have a development that kind of spurred this on, and that's the Hadco development. Wanting to get an answer right now. Well, it is part of the review process going on right now.
I mean, Mayor, it's obviously your decision, but I'm more than happy to talk about stuff since this is a work session only item. So at least they could have input from 3 out of the 5.
Well, if the artificial turf doesn't have any pressing, I would suggest we wait on that one. With the information of Hadco waiting on the canal burial, let's go ahead with that discussion.
Okay, so Mayor and Council, the code currently requires that canals that are adjacent or within a project that they are buried unless the Bureau of Reclamation or the canal company doesn't allow covering burial pipe into the canal. We do have that Hadco development that does have the canal on the east side there, the ULDC canal, which we've said, okay, based on the code, you need to bury that. However, there is some legal issues that could come into play with the Nolan Dolan, and I will actually, Kevin here is online. I'm not an attorney, so I would, let Kevin jump in here and speak to the legalities of that.
So yeah, basically it just comes down to, since the canal doesn't run directly across their property, the development actually borders and is adjacent to the canal. And so they are legally, we can only require them to bury half of it because the other burden of burying the canal belongs to the property to the east. So at most we could require 50%, but then there's other issues that have come up, and that is, does it make sense to require burying canals for commercial properties where there aren't the same public safety concerns or even like the nuisance issues with like mosquitoes and open canals? But we just wanted to get some direction from the council about how they feel about that. We think it makes sense to continue to require burying in the residential areas and zones However, commercial may not make the most sense, but that's up to the council to make that decision. It's a policy decision. And we're just asking for guidance from the council.
Mark, I know in the past when we've tried to work with the canal company, sometimes they've been difficult to let us or let contractors bury the canal. I know from what you had said before that concrete pipe doesn't have as much water loss. We don't have the weed problem, better flows. So I think there's some value there.
Right. It really, this one is tricky, especially, you know, in the sense of it's adjacent to it. So we're talking about the property right next door to the property they're developing. And so, you know, it certainly would make sense if, say, this was adjacent to an elementary school or something like that, from a safety standpoint. But we really don't have that scenario. And so the way that the policy is written, it just gives us kind of a mandated, you must bury this pipe. And we were just curious as a council if that was the intent, and if that is the intent, then, you know, we can certainly continue down that path. If that was something that you wanted us to clarify, we could bring back code to the Planning Commission, which would ultimately do. Again, we wanted your policy direction before we proposed changes. If you were, you know, if there was concerns or if there was a position that you know, wanted to take on this particular issue.
Now, remind me what's going to be on the other side. Is that Lehigh, or is that still in our?
Yeah, that's going to be Lehigh. And if you remember, that's kind of up on a steep slope, and it's kind of right on the edge of that slope. So immediately.
But I mean, it won't be Saratoga Springs residences, but it potentially could be residences next door.
It could. I would think that the slope might prevent that. But again, that's, you know, it would not be developing in the city.
I'm just wondering.
And a lot of, if I can add, I mean, a lot of cities, some require burying, others don't. They require, of course, fencing and other things that help mitigate those impacts. So there's other things that they can do, which I'm sure Lehigh would require when that property develops.
I will say I'm not particularly in favor of the city having to chip in funds to bury a canal, especially when it's such a benefit to the canal company and not necessarily us. It protects their water. So, I mean, to me, that's where it stands is since it's running a commercial development and it borders, I'll just say it, another city. We're benefiting residents of another city using impact fees or sales tax revenue or whatever, whatever fund it comes out, I don't know, but for another city.
So is the canal actually in Lehigh or is it in Saratoga?
I believe it would be in Saratoga still, but that's kind of the demarcation.
Yeah, the
point.
canal is entirely within, well, at that point, yes, within Saratoga.
I think, to be more specific, we approved a detachment from the city that would come up to the eastern edge of that canal. And so, interestingly enough, Lehigh still has not solidified that boundary adjustment.
Right. Well, and usually, like in the case of Edge, it's entirely, the cost isn't borne by the city, it's borne by the developer. So it's not, as we're not using, you know, impact fees to pay for it, are we?
But that's if the canal goes through the property, then they're responsible for it. This canal doesn't touch the
I'm just
property
trying
at
to
all.
understand the normal funding source. But in this case, we're never going to be able to exact the other half of the canal from the property owner on the other side because they're not in our city.
My thought is
that's correct. Yeah.
Mark, is the risk to the homes in Lehigh if they build them, if the canal were to spill over or have a breach, or is it to the commercial property in Saratoga? Because if it's to Lehigh's housing, then that should be their developer's burden to bury for their buyers.
It really falls down to the agreement, and I think you know, burying the canal in this case may give us some liability. I don't know, Kevin, what your perception is on that. Again, it depends on what the agreement is that we sign when we have them bury it. So
yeah, So, there's a lot of pros and cons to burying. That can be one thing that helps. I think that, so if you talk to the canal companies, some of them are in favor of burying and others aren't. ULDC has been warming up to the idea of piping the canal. Welby Jacob has been in favor of it, but it just really depends on the canal company, and there's a lot of evidence that goes one way or the other. So I don't know if we could say definitively whether this is going to help or hurt the situation. I would say that commercial is going to have less people coming into conflict with the canal or coming into contact with the canal. And so I would say that for commercial, there's probably less of a public safety need. And that public safety concern probably is more applicable in the residential zones, but there still is some benefits. Like was mentioned earlier, I think Mayor Miller mentioned that with the evaporation losses of the canal, that always helps when it's piped. But it also is very expensive to replace that pipe when it needs to be replaced. Hopefully that's not in our lifetimes, but at some point that will need to be replaced. There can be canal pipes that break too, and that can cause problems because you don't readily see the damage that's occurring.
So my personal opinion would be where it's not on their property and it's adjacent to commercial, I wouldn't push to have it buried.
Mayor, regarding your question about seepage and spillage from the canal, the topography out there would indicate that both seepage and spillage would go eastward to Lehigh.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like we need to, it can't be just a one-off though, where we say this property, we need to make a determination for staff. Are we going to say commercial doesn't need to bury it, or I think, or only if it's on the border, or I don't feel comfortable saying.
I think in commercial adjacent to, because it doesn't go through their land, is the direction.
It goes through their land because the canal company owns the land it goes through, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
So not in every case. Sometimes, so in this case, I believe the canal is through easement. The fee simple owner of the property is not the canal company. It's just through easement.
Okay, so
that's another challenge of this one as well.
I mean, I'm comfortable, Mayor, like you said, if we want to not require it in commercial zones for a lot of the reasons that have been brought up in the meeting, I want to make sure we have criteria for when it should be and when it shouldn't be, as opposed to, the HAGCO wants this property to not have to do it, and so we're going to do a one-time exemption. It needs to be, a rule going forward that staff can apply equally.
And you bring up a great point. That is, again, we wanted to just get your direction as to whether that is something that you would want us to consider and bring. We certainly need to do some research, and we certainly need to draft that in such a way that it doesn't do as what you were suggesting, Councilmember Porter, is that it is uniform and it is something that could be enforced very appropriately going forward.
And I like the mayor's suggestion is adjacent to or bordering or whatever, because at this point we can never exact. I think that aligns with what I was suggesting financially as well, because from the city, we'll never be able to get those funds back from any other developer. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I know there may be a detriment long term, but I don't really fundamentally believe that. So we would be paying for the canal company in perpetuity to have less evaporation and obstruction in their water, which that's their responsibility in my mind.
If I can add one point to this conversation, I know it's not next to residential, but my understanding is that the city trail will run along this canal. And so that may be one thing for consideration by the council if public trails are going by the canal, because you will have more residential and resident use than in normal commercial areas if there's a public trail going by that. So just one consideration.
Councilman Wilden, up in your neighborhood, we have a trail that runs by the canal. Pros, cons?
I I think for the most part, people really enjoy it. It gives a different view besides just the standard items. I mean, the homes that border it are not always big fans because of the weeds getting out of control or whatnot. But outside of that, it doesn't really create a nuisance, and it's a good thing, at least for my community. Almost, if all of a sudden all those were gone, I think you'd have some significant uproar, at least in our neighborhood.
Well, I think, where this is going to be a commercial property, it's going to be maintained by a landscaping company. I think that the likelihood the weeds are going to get out of control is probably, and we can put that into the site plan or whatever, but I think it's less likely that it's going to get out of control.
That's a good point, but staff, could you clarify, because in Harvest Hills, it runs directly through an HOA. The HOA is not responsible for it.
No, and again, if you're in favor of looking at that, then let us do some research, because again, there is a very lengthy agreement that I know is associated with this topic, especially on that topic, Councilmember Wilden. So again, we'd happily do that if you can just point us in the direction. We'll bring something back to the Planning Commission and then ultimately back to you as well.
So just to answer, there were a couple of questions. One about liability that was brought up. Anytime the city provides a recreational amenity like a trail and doesn't charge a fee for it, this actually applies for any landowner who does this. As long as there's no fee charged for use of that recreational amenity, Utah law exempts the landowner from liability. So I wouldn't be concerned with that. And in Harvest Hills, it's a little bit different because we actually do have an encroachment agreement with the canal company where that development was allowed to use the canal kind of like a recreational amenity. That's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at if there is a trail, this developer, this property owner, and the rest of the property owners in this same area would be responsible for fencing off the canal. So there wouldn't be any encroachment from the trail. So that's why, I mean, we, like Mark mentioned, we can bring some ideas to the council and have you consider those, but that's kind of where we're at this point.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Mark, staff's got direction.
Yeah, I think we'll work on an amendment, take to the Planning Commission, and we'll incorporate these thoughts. If we have any other specific questions, we'll certainly feel free to reach out to you if there's anything that comes up as we do our research and prepare that for you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
And it looks like we lost crowd somewhere along the way, so chalk that up to bad internet. So apologies for that. Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. And just real briefly too, the canal, we were talking about the ULDC canal there along the Hadco property and whatnot. I think Mark made a brief comment about it. The land or the disconnect to Lehigh, that plat was actually recorded the end of September. So below the canal is now officially in Lehigh.
Okay.
And by below, you mean east of the canal?
Yes. Now, Mayor, I assume you want to hold off on the other two then till the other, we can have full council, or do you want to?
If we could, so yeah, if we could, because I know Michael has some ideas with mixed use zone. I know both Chris and Ryan have some artificial turf design guidelines. So if we could hold off on those, if there's no pressing issues.
Okay, we'll just then reschedule that for the December City Council.
Okay. Perfect. Jumping back down, back up to reports, business items. Business item 2, the South Saratoga Elementary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me get my screen up here for you. We have the South Saratoga Elementary School subdivision, preliminary subdivision plat. This application is from the Alpine School District for the South Saratoga Elementary School. The applicant is Frank Pulley, and the owners are Alpine School District as well as the Lighthouse Cove Development. And they are dedicating the center line of the road to the east of Schooner Drive. The subdivision is located south, the southernmost portion of the city, south of Pelican Bay, the Pelican Bay subdivision. And the improvements that the design of the subdivision is, there is one lot, which is the school site. And then it has the Captain Street and Schooner Drive improvements, as well as a connection to Redwood Road to the south, and the trail improvements along the frontage. They have requested to phase the subdivision into 2 phases for design purposes and timing with their coordination with UDOT. The first phase will include the school district site, or the school site, like I had mentioned, as well as the public streets, Captain and Schooner. That's in the first phase. The second phase will include the frontage along the Redwood Road, as well as the connection to Redwood Road from Schooner. And that the Redwood Road Trail, which is detailed by our master plan, is the improvements that they'll make there. Let's see, we have the landscaping. The school has, they've done parcels. They have a parcel up here at the front, as well as a parcel that is on the north side of Captain Street. We've asked them to include some screening, and they've graciously done that. So to screen for the neighborhood to the north, Pelican Bay subdivision. Just so you know, the trees do end. The question did arise why this was not, the trees weren't continued down here. There is a drainage basin there on that property, so they won't be able to continue the trees there, but at least they will in the park strip. Other than that, because it is an elementary school, it is part of the school district. The staff has found that they comply with all of this. We do have some specific conditions in regards to the improvements of the road to the south. So the improvement bond and impact fees for the public improvements, including those in phase 2, will need to be paid prior to recordation of any final plat. Other than that, the Planning Commission recommends approval for the subdivision, the South Saratoga Elementary subdivision. Have any questions for me?
I have one, if I may, Mayor.
Right.
And maybe I didn't quite catch this in the documentation, what you said. So phase 2, it seems like that's purely a road and the frontage to Redwood Road.
Correct. It'll be a road dedication plat and the frontage improvements. And the reason for this is they're planning on having it done when the school opens. They've had to coordinate with UDOT in the design connection. UDOT has wanted to make sure that it was designed with their future plans. And so they've been the holdup on them getting that in with the full subdivision and doing those improvements now. And so in order for them to get started so that they meet their deadline of getting the school open by next August, they need to get these public improvements done so that they have access to the school site. And so that's why we recommended that they phase it, because of design, but in order to ensure that the city, that they will put in the street to the south, that's why we have that condition, so that we have the assurance that public improvement to the south and that connection, because it's going to be imperative to have that connection in place so that not a lot of the traffic will funnel through rather than bombarding the neighborhood to the north. So that connection is necessary, and the school understands that. It's just with a subdivision like this is one of the ways that we can ensure that does get done.
Mayor and Council, I spoke with Rob Smith at length last week, and again, we're I think in a good spot with them. There's a good partnership. We've been working hard on trying to make things work, and they certainly appreciate us, helping them move forward in this regard. From a timing standpoint, I do think that it's really just more of a timing standpoint. But again, we always need a little bit of flexibility as things sometimes change. But I am very excited because we're talking about this in November. And the last time we had something like this, we were talking with them in February, and they still were able to get the school open, but it was a very panicked scenario. The fact that they're moving so far along now is really a great sign that we won't have a rushed opening next August.
Mark and Tippy, I just listened to all that. Are we assured phase 2 will be in place before the school opens?
That is why we're having them bond. So what the school district has told us is that if they don't, it will be a week, 2 weeks, possibly into the school year that they would finish it. They're trying to get it to where Captain Street and Schooner, they are collector roads, so that the width on those and the lanes, according to the traffic study, is sufficient. But as planners and engineers, we knew that southern connection to Redwood Road was necessary. And so the timing, it's a timing thing, as Mark said, that they are trying their darndest to be able to get that in. But they are working with UDOT, and UDOT is sometimes the holdup on that.
So if it's not in, we don't know what the school boundaries are. Those buses coming down Redwood are going to have to go through, instead of going down to that south entrance, they have to go all the way through those neighborhoods to access the school until that road's in.
Correct. And hopefully temporarily. And that's why we're trying to get this. That's why we've made him bond. That's why we've requested that condition that they bond for those improvements. So we have that assurance that that improvement is going to get done. It is honestly a timing thing, and they know the necessity of it. But they are working with UDOT.
If I could interject one other thought, typically the school, when they have built other roads, they've typically had a year warranty from the contractors that are building it. And so typically once the roads have been built, you have the assurance that it's going to meet the warranties because of the warranty. So this is kind of unique, them bonding or being willing to bond up front if they're going to miss it. Generally, and then they use their their warranty as their proof of bond for the warranty work. So there is a slight nuance.
Yeah, I understand that we're bonding and the road will go in. I just don't want the road to go in a month and a half after school starts and have all that traffic herd in the neighborhood to the north. But I see what we're doing here. I'm good.
And we have vocalized that to the school district. They're quite aware of how important that connection is at the start of the school year. So,
Gina, are they building the full width of, I believe it's Schooner?
I am not sure on that. We don't have the design of that road. So that's one thing that they're holding up on is the actual design. And so
I can answer that question.
Street standards, and Gordon can answer that question.
Yeah, so Schooner is the road that goes along the east side of the school. And yes, they're building, it's not only the full width, but they've widened it beyond residential width to accommodate the busing movements and whatnot. So it's wider than a local street, and they'll install all the pavement, including a curb on the other side.
Okay. I was just, again, if we're gonna have buses driving on there, if they were only building their half width, I was concerned that.
Yeah, and that is why the Lighthouse Cove,
the property to the east is going to develop.
Right.
So it's a full local width plus some.
Okay.
I thought they were just going to put big wheels on the buses so they could off-road it. I I'm good with this. Whatever we can do to help expedite building of the school, the better. We don't want to get into another situation like we had before. I think this goes without saying, but public improvements on the bonding would also include finishing the trail along Redwood Road. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to double verify.
And some of that is the design with UDOT and their plans to widen Redwood Road down in that southern portion.
We do have
trying to figure out where the right of way is going to eventually be, so they can put the trail in appropriately. Okay.
We do have Frank Pulley on the line. He's with Alpine School District. If you have any specific questions, or Frank, if you have any corrections that you'd like to recommend after we've kind of walked through this.
Have we resolved the crossing of Redwood?
We have not. Right now, it is being anticipated that the cost is probably vastly greater than any of us are willing to bear.
Okay.
We'll keep working
And
on
we
it.
don't even know if there's a need for a crossing, where the boundaries are going to be.
Well, we won't know the boundaries until after the crossing will have had to have been built.
Right. So do you want to build the chicken or the egg?
Yeah. My guess is if the crossing's built, the boundaries will change it accordingly, whether or not it's built. But anyway, I just wanted to know where we were at on that discussion.
Okay, any other comments? We don't have a motion on it, so.
I'll move approval of business item 1. Are you accepting a motion, I mean?
Item 2, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can reapprove 1 as well if you want. I'll move that we approve business item 2, including all staff findings and conditions.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman, second Councilman Carn. Any further discussion? Porter?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Perfect.
Thank you, Council and Mayor.
Okay. Jacob Ranch. South preliminary plat, Margaret Stoddard, Patriot Ridge.
Gina, can you unshare so I can share? Thank you. Okay. Here, I'm all set now. So Jacob's Ranch is in the R110 zone. It's at the west end of Lariat Boulevard. The applicant is Patriot Ridge, which is the Stoddards. Okay. My slide is not advancing. Just a second. Okay. This is the overall project. There are 2 phases. So here's phase 1, which includes the open space. Within the open space, there is a drainage channel that connects to the drainage channel that leads to the major detention basin in Jacobs Ranch. As you are all aware, this area flooded several years ago. So as part of the open space improvement, we have asked them to armor that channel through this area. There is also a part of the open space off of their site, so their project boundary ends here. However, the current trail and armoring end here, so we're asking to connect the trail and armor the channel through this area. And in exchange for armoring that, we would like to give them open space amenity point credits for adding that to their project. And we have in the conditions outlined exactly how many points that would be. They will have extra open space, so they'll have a 2.24 acre credit of equivalent acres, and then they'll have a 0.27 acre credit of actual acreage. And then they will have extra points as well. They would like to use those as credit for future phases in Jacobs Ranch, and we don't see any concerns with that. They have some property. So this is Land Rock Estates, and they have been selling parcels to owners who abut their property, and we have asked that they clean this up as a condition of approval for this particular one, that all of this be cleaned up and go through an official plat amendment process so that those are added to those lots through the proper channel. And we would like them to do that before the final plat for this subject application is recorded. Here is a recommended motion with the conditions of approval, and then you'll notice that number 6 talks about how many points would be assigned to the armoring. That would be 138.48 amenity points. There's also a condition that I just mentioned, number 4, about cleaning up the Land Rock Estates lots. The preliminary plat right now, the lots on the west edge are overlapping the current Foothill Boulevard freeway alignment, and we would like them to make some adjustments to clear that up so they are lined up with that most recent addition. That's all. It's up to you now.
Comments from the council?
Sarah, is that last condition in the report? I don't think I saw that.
Condition 7.
I hope so, but I'm sorry, it's in the engineering report. I just wanted to make sure it was clear and added it here as well.
I see it. I do see it now. My only other comment on this was, with those homes on the very west edge being right up against Foothill Boulevard, do we want to put that on the deed of the property that they acknowledge that they're building next to a major corridor?
I think that's a good call.
Sure.
Yeah,
I agree.
or we'll get blamed for it later.
Or at least the mayor will.
Yeah. Will don't point his finger at me. So, yeah. With
That was my only concern here.
With that, Chris, if you want, I'd entertain a motion. You can add that.
Sure. Hang on a second.
Can I ask one real quick question?
Yep.
Along the back corner of it, it looks like there's going to be a little bit of space between the corridor or the boulevard and the homes. If you could go back a few slides, you could see what I'm talking about. I'm like pointing at my screen as if you can see it. It's in our packet on, yeah, like right there. What's gonna, do they not own that property? Or is that just gonna be, what's gonna happen there? That little back left-hand corner.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Can you see what I'm talking about?
This right here.
Yeah.
At the top of Lariat, at the west end
Yes.
of that has been left out intentionally because Lariat will most likely connect to Mountain View Corridor, but we don't have a design yet, so we don't know how much property is needed. So engineering will work with them on that, and that can be included in a future phase of development.
This will be for like a slip lane or the intersection or something like that. Is that what you mean?
It
I
might
think
be.
it's to accommodate an underpass or a separated grade crossing. And
Okay.
so some space there is being reserved to make that transition.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a perpetual weed patch that will never be maintained. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, we'll
Okay,
entertain a motion.
I move the city council approve the Jacobs Ranch plat as preliminary plat as outlined in the exhibits with the findings and conditions in the staff report, including the extra condition that the homes bordering a future Foothill Boulevard, Mountain View corridor have it recorded that they're on a major transit system.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman Carn,
I'll second.
second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion?
Maybe you don't need to add this, but those two homes that I was talking about before won't be right adjacent to the corridor or the boulevard, but is that inherent in your motion? I think those two should be included as well.
So moved.
Got an amended first,
I guess. Yeah.
an amended second. Okay. Wilden,
Aye.
Carn,
Aye.
Porter,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously. We have some people online. Since we're making a cost out of this agenda tonight, departmental reports. Do any of you have questions for staff that's online right now from the department reports?
I don't. I saw the ladder truck. It looks great in the pictures.
Perfect. Okay, so we can excuse staff that was hanging out for us for department reports. We do have our strategic plan advisory update.
Mayor, were you also jumping over the first quarter financial report as well? We've got
If you want.
online for that one.
I don't know. You just sent me a message saying we need to get to number 6 quick.
Sorry. Did anyone have any questions on the first quarter financial report? Shalice had submitted that.
No, I think that the notes, identified or answered any questions I had. So
Perfect.
Thank you. That's all we had. And then apparently we've got a Grizzly Adam of a Mackie Smith joining us.
Hi, everybody. How are you all doing?
Good.
As you can tell, quarantine has been very good to me. It's just people. It's just so great to be talking to everyone. Hey, council, mayor, Mark, the gang, it's great to be here with you all virtually and to see you again. I'll try and keep it brief because I know you all have a couple other agenda items, but we've had some real success on the strategic planning process. I remember when we were all in the room together in January, mapping out the plan of engaging in this kind of endeavor again, and then the world changed. And so I think as I go through a little bit of the engagement that the advisory committee has let out on, I think you all will be pretty impressed at the work that they've done. David, am I able to share those slides, or what would be?
Share it, just tap the screen share and it should allow you to select.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Were these sent to us? I'm sorry. Did we get these yet?
I don't think you have.
Staff reports. I don't believe this was sent to you. Mackie just.
David, if you have it, David, can you send it? Because I'm looking at the screen on my phone, not my computer. It'd be easier to have it.
Yes, Mackie sent it to me this evening, so I'll email it to the council right now.
Thank you.
Perfect. So just a quick update for the work that we've done. We have now almost, I'll explain why we're saying almost, wrapped up on community engagement, that first essential stage. First off, I just want to say thank you all so much for the individuals that you recommended for the advisory committee. In the past, with other cities I've worked with, you'll see 1 to 2 people kind of check out either mentally or just completely just say, hey, I don't really have time for this. For all the 7 members that we've had on this committee, they have all been extremely engaged. Really just they follow up on their assignments and what they commit to do. They're proactive in circling back to us with other ideas on community outreach. And I just want to say thank you all so much for the residents that you recommended. They've done a really good job, and you'll see why. Jumping to this slide on what we have been able to do for community engagement, we've facilitated 10 sessions with a couple more in process that are scheduled. Specifically for the public. There's been, David, how many people do we have scheduled to join in for our 2 sessions that we're doing tomorrow? Do you know?
I believe it's just
ballpark.
Yeah, it's around 20.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're going to be able to engage with another 20 individuals. I believe, was it Councilman Wilden? Were you there for the Harvest Hills session?
Yes, I was, but you remember I didn't say anything. I didn't want to scare
Yes,
them.
I know. I know. I'm not calling you out, but you were there to see one of them. We try to keep these smaller, just given the online facilitation approach. But the fact that we have been able to conduct 10 focus groups, collect over 1,000 surveys. I think our final number was 1,070, and organizations that we've either done a focus group with or we have specifically solicited a survey response, say that 10 times fast. That includes about 25 different organizations throughout the community that have participated. If I can jump into this next one, for the survey, just a couple of high-level demographics. We've been able to get a really great cross-section of residents who have been here for under a year, for 1 to 2 years, for more. It hasn't been skewed to just one perspective. And I think that gives us a really diverse set of data points that we can review. Also, there's a couple points on, or a couple individuals, it wasn't completely blank on the 12 to 19 age range. It just doesn't show up as significantly as some of these other ones. We're actually able to keep it really diverse as far as age, with the amount of people that we have in that 20 to 29 age range equal to the amount in the 50 to 59 range, which in other cities I've worked with, it typically skews the opposite, where as you get older, the number gets larger. So the fact that in the age range, specifically between 30 and 39, that's been the majority of responses, I think is a really good showing of residents who have been here, who have set roots down here, and who plan to live here for the foreseeable future. So a lot of investment from those individuals. As far as our facilitated dialogue sessions, our focus groups, here are a few of the organizations we've conducted sessions with. The Thunder Ridge Elementary PTA, I could go through the whole list, but we'll be sharing that with you all. The two that are upcoming are with the public, which will take place tomorrow. And we are going to do one more session with staff to make sure that every department is able to have a seat at the table on this feedback gathering stage of the project. As far as what next steps look like, if you've seen the movie Amadeus, it's kind of, this is my requiem. I get into a dark room for a week and I don't come out until the data is cooked and fully vetted through. And so I started working on that this week. Might be why my beard is even more puffy than normal, because this is my first human interaction of the week, it seems like. So for the rest of this week, we're going to be doing a lot of analysis of the feedback that we've received. And we'll be sharing that feedback summary with you all as a council, in addition to the advisory committee, just to keep you in the loop of what residents were saying. That's going to go on through the rest of this month. And then we're really on to next steps of building out the first draft of the strategic plan with the advisory committee and really having them lead out on that process. That's all that I had really to share with you all, just a high level feedback or a high level of the feedback we've received and what next steps look like. Once again, the fact that we were able to receive over 1,000 survey responses, to be able to conduct 10 focus groups. In other cities, I've seen them just do 3 to 4 and just say, "Okay, we're good. Let's move on." But for this committee, it's I'm really happy about their passion of trying not to leave any stones unturned. And so the fact that amidst a pandemic, people have been able to take time to do even one more Zoom meeting at the end of their day, just to talk to some consultant about the city of Saratoga Springs, I think is a really good showing of the passion that these residents have. So any questions that you all have, happy to chat and walk through this a little bit more.
Not necessarily a question, but a comment. Just looking at the various outreaches that you did, I'm grateful. Our city has a lot of HOAs, a lot of large HOAs. I'm guessing that, you had meetings. I know you mentioned Harvest Hills. I'm guessing that several of the other HOAs have been represented. I'm also glad that you were able to find, or that you and the committee were able to find ways that people who aren't in a prepackaged organization like that were able to give some feedback, going to the Thunder Ridge PTA and having neighborhood meetings and stuff like that, so that is that I'm one of those people that choose specifically not to live in an HOA, and I'm glad that people with similar proclivities are also being represented in the input that the committee's receiving. So that's great.
I love that, Councilman Porter. I mean, to your point, I don't remember her last name. I feel bad, but her name was Jenna. She was a member of Thunder Ridge Elementary PTA, and she actually went ahead and said, "Hey, can I get neighbors in my community together? We're not in an HOA. Can we do a session?" And so we were able to then do an ad hoc focus group with just some of her neighbors in the local, in a couple of the neighboring neighborhoods. It's redundant, but in that general area that weren't HOAs. And so we had about 12 people on that call. And so we really tried, and by we, I'm really talking about the committee. The committee really tried to focus on, hey, let's engage these HOAs by sharing the survey on all of their focus group, on their Facebook pages, but let's also make sure that we're hearing from the people who aren't part of HOAs. So just thanks for bringing that point up.
Mackie, what time's your focus group tomorrow?
There's one at 6 o'clock and then another one at 7 o'clock.
David, can I be a fly on the wall for one of those?
I think that works great.
If someone could just send me those 2 invites, I'll join one of them.
Perfect. The only feedback I would give is the more of a what's the word, of a hidden fly on the wall you can be, the better. I just don't want it to any participants to then turn figuratively speaking and then just go, "Hey, councilman."
I'm not going to say a word. I'll change my picture even.
Cool. Awesome. No, yeah, but definitely allowed to listen in and hear what residents are saying.
Okay. Perfect. Anything else or questions on the strategic plan? Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you all so much for your time, and just once again, really appreciate the opportunity to be engaging with the community. They're not letting us down in terms of, they're not holding back any punches, but they're also not holding back any praise that they have as well. It's really a great balance.
That's good. I look forward to seeing the end product. It sounds like it's going to be great.
Heck yeah. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you. Mark, let's continue on to item 7.
You bet. Mayor and council, we've included in the packet the city council goal update. These were the goals that were set. We've color coded those, and Owen can jump in here and help me out as he's kind of been helping me with this. What we've done is we've kind of color coded those, and this is just an update. This is a precursor. Again, we weren't necessarily looking at trying to have everything wrapped up, but we do have some great progress that's happening on the council goals that were set back in our retreat back in January. Again, this is just more of a precursor as we discuss and prepare for our January retreat this year. One thing, because of COVID, we were not able to do a mid-year retreat like we typically try and do. And so again, this is us just following up. Again, some of the I think very big highlights in this, and we've already talked about this somewhat, so it's not necessarily an announcement to the community, but Foothill Boulevard, the fact that we've received $8.5 million worth of funding. We're working with the county to try and get back, county and MAG staff to try and get back an additional 1.5 million. We hope that we can get that reinstated, we think, in January. So we'll see how that goes. The city cemetery, we're working with Camp Williams and their ACUB funding. And again, we believe that we've got that coming. It was approved by Harriman City about a week ago. And so that portion of it has happened. The ink's not dry yet, so we don't want to count our chickens too much, but we are certainly very happy about that. The bonding prioritization, we had an update back in October where we talked about that. Obviously, the strategic plan is going on. I think Mackie just gave a great update of where we're at with that. Again, still looking at the needs assessment for the library and City Hall. Again, right before COVID, we're looking at some particular options of repurposing space here in the city. And we put that on hold with COVID, and we're still looking at some other options, but we'll continue to move that one forward. Obviously, Patriot Park purchase, the purchase date for that, the drop dead date on that is 2024, and we discussed that in our bonding prioritization a couple weeks ago. We're excited. We've got the Utah Lake Trail that is going to be constructed here in 2021. The full-time fire transition, we got the SAFER grant. You know all about that. The long-term fiscal sustainability, this is something that we've talked about, somewhat put on hold, but it's still something that we're very interested in. Owen is giving you the update, but we've got the passport office that's been approved. We've got our staff right now that are in training, and we're acquiring the equipment and staffing that office. So we'll hope to have that open here. Owen, when were we looking to open that? Probably
the first of the year, just based on the training regimen that they have to go through, the information they have to get, working with the federal agencies, just getting everything ready to go. So.
Thank you very much. And then we've got some various projects and things like integrating, North Shore planning, things of that nature underway. Again, we the GIS concept layers earlier in the spring, and so that's public facing now, and we've got that link. Again, we've reconciled some of the recreation surveys, things of that nature. Again, we've still got another couple of items, but if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to tackle those with you. Again, some of them are still underway, and we continue to move forward. But again, this was kind of our reconciliation for where we're at this point. Some other items that were more action items that I'll give an update later on as we continue forward. Mayor, did you have any questions, or any of the council members have any questions?
I have one.
Okay. Chris Porter first.
All right. Just on the one I'm looking at is the pivot away from retail, focus on primary jobs. In there, we talked about either amending our current zones or creating a new zone that would encourage that kind of development. I mean, we've had the Thrive development come in and basically say, yeah, this is what we're trying to do, but it doesn't fit in any of your zones. And, we have to pick and choose which zone for which building. So as part of our discussion with the mixed use update, maybe they're not the same topic exactly, but I would like to see some sort of movement on, either, or at least a discussion on whether it's better to amend our current zones or whether we need a third, or whether we need to completely redo our business park zone or whatever. So I think that, if we're granted, we're not going to see a lot of that development in the next year or so. So now's the time where we can do it without any pressure from development, and we can get it right before the recovery.
So. Fantastic, thank you. I think that's great.
Hey, Mark, one question I had on this, and the only reason I've got the question is because it's dated today, is a post office meeting with Representative McAdams' office. Did that happen?
Yes, it did happen. We had a very interesting conversation with them. I'll be honest, the post office basically said, we don't see a need for another post office in Saratoga, Eagle Mountain, or Lehigh for the next 5 years. Within the next 5 years, we argued with them mightily. Each of us were pulling together population data and growth data, which was sent to them this afternoon. Congressman McAdams was on the line. He did not accept that answer. And so we will be having a follow-up meeting. The individual that was on the line, he tried to answer the questions, but he kept pivoting, saying a lot of this needs to be handled by the local representative and the district manager. And so it kept getting pointed back to, well, the district manager needs to respond to that. So we've got another meeting scheduled with the district manager. So again, it's ironic. Congressman McAdams pointed out that in Salt Lake City, with a population of 1 million people, there was some 30 post offices spread out across Salt Lake County. And then he pointed to our area, Eagle Mountain, Lehigh, Saratoga Springs, and we're sitting at just under 150,000 people, and we have one post office. And so it seems that there's a disproportionate distribution of post offices in Salt Lake County and a complete neglect in Utah County. And so, it was quite apparent that there's not equal service. Again, that's when the post office rep kind of pivoted and said, hey, look, this really is something that needs to be brought up by the district manager. So again, we're going to go back to that here again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Anything else?
No, thank you very much. Appreciate your guidance and direction, and we'll continue to work on these goals.
Okay, we'll wrap up the report section. Mark, do you have anything from administration for ongoing review?
No, Mayor, not at this time. Thank you.
Perfect. Council?
Mayor, there may be some slight changes to some funding we're getting from the county for the South Marina, but I think it's going in a positive direction, but that's not approved yet. We were shorted, but it looks like that might change.
Perfect. Okay, Councilman Porter, do you have something? Okay, perfect. We'll go back down to business item 4, Fox Hollow Neighborhood 8.
Okay, I need to be granted permission to share my video or share, sorry, what? Not my video and
As a panelist, you should have full permission to share both of them.
well, okay, it says you cannot start your video because the host stopped it.
Or we've got it's
We
up.
can see it now.
Okay. All right, so Fox Hollow Neighborhood 8, it's a concept plan. You don't typically see concept plans. However, this one is in a planned unit development, which is Fox Hollow, and the code requires a non-binding review by the Planning Commission and the City Council. So okay. The area outlined in red is the portion of Neighborhood 8 that is under review with this concept plan. The remainder of Neighborhood 8 is just adjacent to that between the road and the red line. So this area here, which is owned by the LDS Church. All right, this is the conceptual layout right here. All of the lots are 5,000 square feet or larger. The specific minimum is listed in the staff report. They do have a collector road running through the project, which complies with the transportation master plan. There is a small triangle adjacent to their property that is not a part of the master development agreement. So we did ask that they provide access to that. They are showing in this location here a 40-foot wide access. However, the Planning Commission asked them to coordinate with the owner or future owner of that just to make sure that it was adequately accessed. And then they do have some variations that are proposed with the concept review, and then some that would be proposed with the preliminary plat. So the minimum lot size and the lot width. And keep in mind, this is common in Fox Hollow to achieve the densities that are vested. And then staff recommends that the City Council provide a non-binding review.
Okay. Comments from the council?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. The variation on the lot size is not out of character with the surrounding homes because of the MDA.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other comments from the council?
My only question here was, does this meet our code for ingress egress with this number of homes and only a few finished roads in and out of there?
Two.
Councilmember Carden, that is a great question. They would be subject to the requirements that limits the number of homes that could be built. It looks like Sarah's camera's frozen up there. They would be limited to the number of homes they could build until adequate access could be provided that met that collector standard. So you're right on spot. Looks like we've lost Sarah completely, but yes.
She didn't like my question, I don't think.
Well, she froze for quite a while there, so Sarah's usually not one to hold back.
Okay, as long as they're limited. Say it again?
By the zoning code, that would be 50 lots.
So they can't record additional lots until they've got the proper access, correct?
Correct, and that's comparable to what we've done with Harvest Hills.
So the way the code is interpreted as well, so that this comes up where a developer will come in and try to come in under that 50 lots, but they're part of a larger project. It looks like the code would be interpreted to require the 2 points of access because this is a cumulative 50 units on a cumulative basis, not individually. So we'll definitely look at that and make sure they comply with that. I want to say that they have 2 points of connection onto the collector road that runs through their property. So that probably meets the code. But again, this is a concept plan. I would be concerned if I were the council about that little corner piece of property that has no access. We certainly wouldn't want to do that. The code does require stubbing of roads to adjacent properties. We wouldn't want that property to be completely landlocked.
So I think my comments were in line with what Councilman Karn was saying. I wouldn't be comfortable with him moving forward, at least on the top left. No one can see it right now, but I think everyone remembers on that long end of it without, that top left area without having some access there, because that's an awful long way for them to go and be a long way for fire trucks to be able to get back in there if there was a problem. Same comments that they need to have access to that corner. And then, Mark, you might be proud of me asking this question, but the water line, is there a reason why it jots to the left and down instead of just running all the way straight down? It just typically water flows better when it's in a straight line.
So I don't know which line you're referring to as far as jotting down to the left.
Blue one.
So it really kind of depends on the pressure zones in this area. And so I'm not sure how those connect with the master plan. Perhaps Gordon or one of the engineers could respond to it. I do want to point out, though, there is a road connection here that connects to the rest of Hawks Landing area. And then you've got this is not a collector, but this is a collector, and this would also be a collector once it's built. So again, there are a couple of connection points that are on there that we would require, obviously follow up with that and make sure it meets code. I think that these are in pressure zone 3, if I'm not mistaken. And so to your question, Councilmember Wilden, I believe that that is why you see that line loop up and goes up, and it loops up into, in essence, what will be this property up here, which is right off of Foothill Boulevard alignment once that develops. So
is there a sorry, this is a somewhat related but a different question. Is there a reason why they are stubbing off that road? I'm looking at like lots 401, 402, 403, 404, rather than having it connect through.
I think Sarah's back on. You mean right here, this cul-de-sac here, as
Like,
opposed
why did they create a cul-de-sac rather than just having it connect through?
I'm guessing, and Sarah or David perhaps could answer, but I'm guessing it's because these lots here, there's desirability to have lots that are on cul-de-sacs. And so I think they could have been doing it for that. And also, depends on the look they're going for in their neighborhood. Sarah, are you available to answer that question? Looks like we still don't have a Sarah. David, do you have any feedback?
I think it.
Yeah, my thought on that is, obviously, if you have a through street there, you're going to have frontage and, two frontages with, could be substantial traffic, at least on what's the cul-de-sac now, if it went through. So my guess is, one, to Mark's point of, the desirability to have that type of product that on a cul-de-sac, but also to limit traffic that actually goes in front of the houses as well.
And I apologize, I'm just noticing now that is also a collector road, and we don't allow homes to front into a collector.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my comment.
Now, just again, just to point out to the council, we did have a conversation a couple weeks ago about the potential shortage of sewer connections and things of that nature. This is probably one of those properties that would be limited. They would only be able to record based on the capacity in the sewer lines that are down in the south end of the city, when we talked about that as part of our capital discussion a few weeks ago. And so there may be some restrictions that would apply to this. Again, this is a concept plan, so it's not an entitlement, it's not an approval, but as this applicant moves forward, they will be made aware of the shortage of sewer connections down in this part of the city.
Okay. Just my other feedback is on the setbacks they're requesting. That, from a concept plan, they identify one setback and then a bunch of others that might come later at the preliminary plan. Just feedback for them. I'm not interested in granting any more setback variances or variations that haven't been granted in other neighborhoods in this particular area. So I feel like that's a little bit of a black box right now. It just says, what was it, the width, and then everything else is at preliminary plat. So
okay,
I'm just giving that feedback to them now. If they come in it's more aggressive than anything else in there, my answer is going to be no.
Okay. Is there consensus among the council on those variation requests?
Well, I mean, I think to Councilman Woodland's point, that was my question at the beginning was, it needs to be in keeping with whatever exceptions they're asking for need to be in keeping with the current character of the neighborhood. They don't get to, move the bar further down the road. They need to look like the homes that they're surrounded by. They don't get smaller just because they left a black box there that we don't know what's in there.
Okay. Fantastic. We will definitely pass that along to the applicant and make sure that they're aware of that. And I think that this gets us what we need.
I would just say the front setbacks, I think that's always a sticking point. If they try to push in the driveway too close to the road, that always creates problems. So of all the setback variances, if they were to request, that would probably be my least favorite one. If they're asking for favorites.
Okay.
Or least favored.
And again, I apologize for the internet connectivity issues. I hope that we've been able to tackle your questions appropriately. Interestingly enough, though, this parcel here is owned by the LDS Church, and I think Sarah pointed that out. So again, from a connectivity standpoint, it will be interesting to see how these kind of mesh together.
Mark, I just got back on my phone. My Wi-Fi's down, so I'm here now.
Sarah, I think we've got the feedback and we can catch up on that later.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, business item 5, the approval of the water credits purchase and sell agreement with Property Reserve Incorporated and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and future substantially similar agreements.
Yeah, Mayor and Council. So if you recall, back in, I think, 2009, when we entered into the water credit agreement with CPB, I believe. No, PRI, sorry. This was for the Central Utah Water. It envisioned a way that we could purchase residual or extra water capacity from that contract from PRI. We're to the point where we've kind of gone through a 300 acre foot contract with Central Utah. We are ready to enter into another 300 acre foot contract. The church or PRI has not used these credits in some of their previous developments. And so we are excited to be able to acquire this water. We have already collected the money for this purchase. And so this is basically a pass-through purchase. I think it's really quite important. If you recall, a couple of years ago when we renegotiated our agreement with Central Utah and with SLR, we determined how we could prepay all of the capital so that there are no ongoing annual capital payments. Again, this is a continuation of that, and we're very excited. We anticipate about a $5.1 million purchase. It was approved in the budget amendments that you saw earlier. That was the shocking number there, but we've received the revenue for that, and basically we're ready to pass that through to Central Utah and to PRI to acquire these water credits as was anticipated in our purchase agreement. So again, look forward to answering any questions that you may have on that.
Mark, can I also add that if in the resolution we're asking for authorization for future purchases as well, as long as they meet as long as the agreement is in the same form and as long as the funds have been budgeted for in the current fiscal year budget. That way we don't have to bring back new agreements to the council for approval.
Again, $5.1 million was a big enough number that I did not want to move forward, even though it was approved in the budget without getting your blessing on the form and substance of us moving forward. But again, this is what we've always anticipated, and thank you for that clarification, Kevin. We just anticipate that's the process that we'd like to move forward with in the future.
I'll entertain a motion.
I have one quick comment and then I'll have a motion. A common refrain that I hear is, as people are arguing against the development that's occurring in the city, is that we don't have water. I think that this demonstrates that we do have an ample supply of water available. We aren't approving anything that can't be serviced. So with that, I will move that we approve the water credits purchase and sale agreement with PRI. And the rest of business item 5 is listed, resolution R20-47 dated today.
We have a first from Councilman Porter.
Do you want
a second from Councilman Karn? Any other comments?
Did you want to include the requested direction from Juris Doctorate Thurman?
Mayor and Council.
I thought that was included in the resolution, but if not.
That was in Chris's the thing comment.
It actually is. It's in the resolution. I just was adding that to Mark's comments. So it's already in the resolution. If you approve the resolution, you'll give us the authorization to do that. And, like Mark mentioned, all of this is anticipated in our water credits agreement, that this excess water is being purchased in the future. So that's all we're asking for.
And one other plug that we commonly miss, and I apologize, Mayor, I know we've got a motion, but a couple of years ago when we renegotiated this agreement, I want to remind the council that in renegotiating that agreement and kind of putting these pieces in place, we saved ourselves about $78 million worth of future capital payments in order to kind of set this up. And so again, this is very advantageous to us. It is us carrying through with what you've directed us to do, which was to make sure that this water was being paid for by development and that it was being paid for as new businesses and new residents came into the city. And in enacting these changes, this is us furthering the opportunity for us to secure this water for future use.
Okay, I have a motion. Porter,
Aye.
Wilden,
Aye.
Card,
Aye.
motion passes unanimously. We have the North Shore Saratoga Road reimbursement agreement. Can we do 6 and 7 together?
You bet. And Gordon's going to walk us through that.
Perfect.
Mayor and council, there was an upsize, well, not an upsize, so that Pony Express could be taken over by UDOT. We had D.R. Horton thicken the pavement section to match UDOT standard. So that's what that one's about. And then the other one is for the widening of Old Saratoga Road northward to make it an arterial instead of a collector. And those are the two.
Okay, any questions from the council?
I have a motion.
Okay.
I move that we approve business items 6 and 7 as listed on the agenda. Our resolutions are 20-48 and 20-49 respectively, dated today.
Okay, I have first from Councilman Porter.
Second.
Second, Councilman Wilden. Any other discussion? Okay, Councilman Porter.
Aye.
Karn.
Aye.
Wilden.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously for those two items. Business item 8, code amendment title 19.
Mayor, council, got a couple of items here tonight. One deals with the food truck ordinance, which we were directed to bring back some changes to you, which will be covered by Tippy. And then Kevin has some changes regarding bonding requirements, so the city falls in line with state code. So with that, we'll turn it over to Tippy, and she can bring up a presentation that she has if needed.
Sorry, I didn't have the slides pulled up since I thought they were your slides.
Oh,
sorry.
I can bring them up here if you like.
Okay, thank you. And while he's pulling that up, I guess I'll get started. So Mayor and Council, thank you for your insight and your direction for us to reevaluate this food truck ordinance in the city. So we took your feedback and talked to various departments in the city to see what would work for the city and our residents. And we worked with the legal department extensively because the state food truck ordinance that was passed last year does restrict what we're allowed to do quite a bit. So what we came up with in your packet today is a combination of all of that. Dave, do you have the?
Oh, I just.
Yeah, I'll have you keep talking, Tippy. It's
And that's
taking a while here.
I'll just go through the document and summarize the changes. So we have the definitions, and these were changed or updated to directly match the state code. So we defined event permit, food cart, and food truck. And then we created a separate section for food trucks on its own. So food trucks now have their own standards, and they're taken out of the temporary use section of the code, which requires a permit. So we're not allowed to require permits for food trucks, and we've established their own standards. So we have delineated where they can park. So they can't park for more than 12 hours in any 24-hour period. They have to park on a hard surface, and no landscaped area counts for this. They can only be parked on private property unless they get a special event permit from the city. And they can't impede vehicular or pedestrian traffic. They have to create the proper keep the proper distances from utilities and safety, like ADA ramps and that sort of thing. They can't be within 10 feet of a manhole, and they can't dispose or discharge anything into our storm drain system. They can't serve food in a drive-through manner. It has to be to pedestrians only. and they need to keep their areas clean and orderly. They need to face the sidewalk. And then we have requirements that they have to use, or they can't use power from a private property unless they have the owner's permission. Aside from these parking requirements, we've also allowed or delineated that food trucks are allowed in all zones where food establishments are allowed. This is directly from the state code. This type of requirement comes from the state code as well. We have to allow them wherever we allow any food business. And then item 3, we've added that food trucks are permitted in residential zones as long as they're parked entirely on private property and do not take up required parking spaces. So just note that required parking spaces are just the 2 off-street parking spaces per unit. So if they have additional parking, then that's fine. They just have to maintain 2 off-street parking spaces per unit.
Before we go on, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things, I think you've done a great job following the direction that's been provided and some great work here. But my question though, is in the residential zone, I guess my only concern is, to me, it looks like, say if someone had a really big driveway, they could go and park there for 12 hours, leave, and then come back the next day. And essentially someone could operate a mobile restaurant in their driveway 7 days a week. Am I missing anything there?
Let's see, I'm trying to find the state code. Sorry, I had this in the presentation. There's a section there that says we can't limit the number of hours that a food truck is parked. As long as it's on private property. So section 1156-103 of the state code says a political subdivision, that's a city, cannot, let's see, I lost my place here. Sorry, just a moment.
Oh, Tippy, so what you're referring to is actually for special events. That is, we basically have to treat special events, a food truck, or we can't prohibit them from operating up to 5 days. As far as in the private residential zones, really the code is only really speaks to, if it's allowed, we can't require a permit. We can restrict it in residential zones. If that's a concern for you, I don't know how we'd regulate that, but if that's a concern for you, we can certainly make that a requirement.
I mean, that would be my preference. I know, I mean, I'm comfortable in the residential zone, but what I wouldn't want, and maybe I'm in isolation, or on my own here, but what I wouldn't want is to basically create a mobile restaurant in someone's driveway, which is not designed to be there. They could come 7 days a week for 12 hours. In a residential zone. I'm only speaking to residential zones.
So Kevin, I actually found the other reference. 1156-106 food truck operation says a political subdivision may not limit if a food truck business has the consent of a private property owner to operate a food truck on private property, limit the number of days a food truck may operate on the private property.
I'm going to throw a wrench into this. If we can't limit it, I think there could be some significant outfall to this.
It sounds like that's something that's going to have to be changed to the legislature, though, rather than we won't be able to address it without running afoul of state law.
Right. So if we can, honestly, this is a big concern for me. I'd rather not allow it in residential zones then. If we cannot restrict how long someone can park in a residential zone, I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're creating a restaurant in a residential zone that potentially is just, they're not designed for that.
Yeah. I know the intent of this change or the discussion around allowing it in residential zones is envisioning, a neighborhood party or somebody wanting to, mission farewell or wedding reception or whatever. kind of a one-off event, but I mean, I can speak from knowledge that we do have food trucks that are operating in our city in this manner out of people's driveways. You know, there's one in my neighborhood that operates like that through the summer. So
As a full-time drive-up restaurant?
they sometimes go, they get, you know, they'll get on the weekends, they'll go out and park in a parking lot somewhere where they have an agreement, I'm assuming. But they operate out of their driveway for the, you know, and the neighborhood uses it as their own. It's a snow cone shack. So
if we can say no more than 12 hours in a 24-hour period, why can't we say no more than 12 hours in a
72-hour period?
72-hour period.
So go back one slide if you would, Tippy, please. This was the section of code. If you could walk us through that particular limitation.
If Dave Johnson has a screen, can you go one more slide over? And this is directly from the state code that I quote here, that I copied here. So 5A is the one that I was talking about. So a city, a political subdivision, which is a city, cannot limit the number of days a food truck may operate on private property if it's on private property with the consent of the owner. So Kevin has more interpretation than that, but that's how I've read that.
But we can limit hours, it sounds like.
Yes, which is what we proposed.
I would propose that we change it from 12 out of 24 to 12 out of whatever. Not whatever, but 72 hours. That's all I can multiply in my head apparently right now.
Well, and then you've got the restriction up there, up top, which is in 3, which says restrict the total number of days a food truck business may operate a food truck within the political subdivision during a calendar year. So I think that between 3 and 5, it gets a little bit dicey with us trying to limit that.
But we're not limiting it.
But I'm guessing that Kevin was going to tell us that anything over 24 hours, we're now restricting the number of days.
Probably.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying. I'm guessing the lawyers are gonna see through that move fairly easily.
Yeah. So this is something. So tell me if I can get some clarification. What is it that you want? What kind of restrictions would you like to place on it? Or what are you?
If we could say 12 out of 72 hours rather than 12 out of 24.
Within a residential zone.
Within a residential zone.
So, but Stephen, on 5C, it's, you know, we cannot require a site plan for the operation of a food truck on private property where the food truck operates in the same location for less than 10 hours per week. If they're there every day, we can do a site plan, require parking.
Yeah.
That's really, you're not limiting it, but it's really one business day and they've got to have a site plan and city approval at that point. Is that right, Kevin?
So no, this is really a confusing statute. We're restricted with as far as a site plan is concerned. You have to go through, you have to go to other sections ahead of this, where it basically says we can't require any sort of a permit or approval for these. They basically can operate as long as they have a reciprocal license in another jurisdiction. I'm not sure.
More than 10 hours a week, how does that apply? What's the point of 5C?
Yeah, I guess we can require a site plan, but that's all it is. It's just give us a site plan. We can't give you our approval, or we can't deny it. You can show us a site plan, but it's not really an approval like our code says.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. I think we do need some more clarification from the legislature, because earlier in this chapter it says that local political subdivisions, and this is what the basis of my interpretation was. It says that this does not take the place of local zoning ordinances and land use ordinances. So you have to look at the intent of a statute before you go to the language. And so it's very confusing and there's some conflicts, but I always side with the intent of the statute. I think what we've proposed, if I think you can walk that line though, and basically make the hour restriction. I wouldn't recommend limiting the number of days because of this language. But I guess I would ask the legislature the question of, if we can strictly prohibit it and not allow it at all, why couldn't we limit the number of days that they operate in residential property? So that's where the confusion lies. But based on the language in the statute, despite the legislative intent, it seems like we should just, you can make an hour restriction, but I would not recommend like a day, like the number of days restriction.
Mark, could you make a note that when we have our meeting with our legislative representatives next month, that this is something we need to mention?
Yeah, I think the food lobby was very, or I should say the food truck lobby was very quick in a couple of successive years of changing the code so that they have more freedoms. But I think, I personally think Councilmember Wilden is spot on. If we allow it, I think that the intent of the legislature, and again, to Kevin's point, it is very confusing because there are conflicting, but I believe the intent, as I've listened to this get debated over the last couple of years with the legislature, the intent was, if it's an allowed zone, they're pretty much without us being able to limit them, as you see kind of in this section. So I think
and I mean, it's having the opposite effect of what they wanted, which they wanted this to be more allowed, more able to for these businesses to do business in the state, but they're putting cities into a box where we have to be more restrictive because they didn't give enough guidance.
Right. So my recommendation would be, again, we wanted to bring this back with the intent of what you'd asked us to do from previous conversations. But if you're uncomfortable, I would recommend that you table this and then let us seek some perhaps a discussion with our legislators, because I think you're right. It is conflicting, and to Kevin's point, their intent was much broader in the sense that we could. But I recall these debates up on the Hill, and I would say, if you're not comfortable, table it, and we'll bring it back at some future.
I mean, I would like, to the point, I would like to be able to allow, somebody to have a one-off food truck come park in their driveway, and have a block party or whatever. I think that's something that should be allowed in our city. But if we can't allow that without opening the door to somebody basically operating a restaurant in a residential neighborhood, it becomes problematic.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with Chris. I'm in favor of being able to do it for block parties and stuff, but until we clarify this, I'm hesitant to open the door.
Yeah, and that was my comment. I think, Councilmember Karn brought this up, and I was very supportive of it coming forth. And I know, Mark, I've had conversations with you in the past, and I agree it would be nice to be able to do this. And I know there's been requests in my neighborhood, and I've been called a Nazi or whatnot, and I may or may have not unknowingly gone to an unauthorized food truck event. If I did, I didn't realize it was, so I'm not admitting to anything there. But in any case, like, there are people in this that would take advantage of this, and we've seen it in certain parts of the cities, not with food trucks, but just operating restaurants out of their garage, which isn't allowed. And this just opens it up, and all you'd have to do is pull it forward and put it behind a fence for 12 hours and then back out, and then you now have a mobile restaurant. It increases traffic around homes and people outside there, and people moved into homes and neighborhoods with zoning for the reason that they did. Again, I'd love to be able to find a way to do this, though, without creating that.
Hey, I agree with everything that's been said here. I do have one question on one of the points. On 1D, no professional or personal services shall be provided by the food truck. How are we defining that?
I think isn't it in the definitions?
Get a smoothie and a massage at the same time. I don't know.
Well, I'm just wondering, if someone has a restaurant that has a food truck and they're catering an event, what does professional services entail? Can they not get out of the truck and serve?
No, I think professional services are and personal services are defined in the code, like doing taxes for somebody, doing massages, doing hair or beauty
Thurman's
services.
mobile law office.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing we need is mobile attorneys everywhere.
And they could just chase the ambulance with their
trailer.
Yeah, because we need mobile trucks to operate a law business. We can't operate out of our home office.
I have a question, Mayor or staff. I mean, there's some other points in here that I would like to discuss. If we're going to table this, would you prefer that we table those points until we bring this back, or do you want to discuss them now?
Discuss them now because that could change the direction of what we're trying to do in the code. Let's get it.
I just had a couple questions. One was 1905.11 1.6. The being with that 10 feet away from a manhole or a storm drain inlet. I understand the 7, they're not allowed to discharge into those. But I mean, it seems like if we're prohibiting them to being near manholes or storm drains, it might become fairly prescriptive as to where they're allowed to locate in the city.
Yeah, and I believe that's probably more of a health code issue as to why that restriction is in place.
Okay.
You don't want them operating over a sewer manhole where they're sucking gases up into the kitchen hood or something like that.
That's
all right.
part of smoking.
Is that where it's coming from, or is this something that I'm just wondering where that line of the code originated from, why we decided to include it.
I would think it's probably based on the whole not wanting to dump, and if somebody's close to one of those, that may give them, hey, I'm right here, nobody's going to see me. And Gordon could give you an idea, or Jeremy. I mean, the manholes and the storm drain inlets, whatnot, those aren't, every 50 feet or so. They're a good distance apart. So I think it does leave quite a bit of room to locate a truck.
All right. There's several, it's not, you're having to be away from a manhole, you're having to be away from a storm drain, you're having to be, off of a public road. Like we've got a lot of restrictions. I don't want to get to a point where somebody says, well, if I follow all of these rules, there's one place in the city I can park. So I just, I want it to be, if there's a reason for the restriction, I understand it. But if it's, and I'm always, this goes back to just how I feel about rules in general. I'm fine prohibiting discharging. I don't necessarily know that, parking, should be regulated just to keep them from thinking that then maybe they can do something. If we outlaw the discharging and disposal of a substance, that should be the crime, not parking where you might be able to do that. I'd just like to know where that comes from. It sounds like we're going to table it, so we can maybe get that answer later.
I don't see it in the state code, so I think this was something that we might have taken from another city in looking at what setbacks they require.
Okay.
But we'll research it.
All right. And then there was one other, I think we kind of addressed it with the parking, the required parking. Again, this becomes a thing where I'm required to have two stalls in front of my driveway. But if I park my car in the garage, which granted I haven't been able to do for years because I filled it up with junk, but assuming that somebody else is more responsible with their garage space than I am, and they can park their car in the garage, why can't they, you know, for one, this goes back to if we're able to allow it as a one-off, they're just having a block party, why can't they use one of those spaces to put the truck? Now, again, back to Councilman Woodland's point, if this is something that's ongoing and happening on a regular basis, then I understand the need for them to maintain their parking spaces. But
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to have a 3-car garage in order to have a food truck come cater your wedding.
So in the same vein of not allowing food trucks on the street, the idea is if you take up the 2 off-street parking spaces, then you're pushing parking into the street. As long as you maintain the spaces that we require for a house, which would be even if, well, yeah, it would be your garage spaces. If you have driveway space, then that would qualify. Like if you could park it there, if that makes sense.
But we don't count stacked parking for our allowance. So my 2 driveway slots is meeting my need for off-street parking, correct?
Well, so technically your garage is your 2 required parking spaces.
Okay. So if I have my 2 garage spaces, I could still have them park in my 2-car garage driveway and cater from the driveway.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That alleviates that concern.
And Councilmember Porter, just as we discussed this, what we didn't want to do is have a food truck show up and have a family, you know, all of their cars scattered out onto the street where
Right.
you're blocking both sides of the road. All of a sudden it becomes a congested traffic issue in that neighborhood.
No, I recognize that but again, you know, it goes back to the discussion of whether this is a once a year thing or if this is a, you know, every day of the week thing. You know, I think you know, in one case we have to be much more restrictive, and in another case we can be less restrictive and allow people to kind of, you know, just be good neighbors. But
Well, and if I can add one thing is, if somebody's having it, based on what's being presented, if someone were to have a food truck in their yard or in their driveway and it causes traffic, you know, that would be something that, you know, would require a special event. If they're expecting that level, they would have to get a block party approval. If it's going to be housed entirely on their property for a wedding or something like that, that would be a horse of different color. But if it's going to create traffic in the neighborhood, that would require a block party, a special event permit.
Okay.
Well, anytime you have one of those, that will drive traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of the concern. I think it's more traffic of, so I guess what I should say is there's been a few of these that have occurred. And from what we understand, it hasn't caused a lot of parking traffic with these illegal ones that have occurred. But it does, you know, cause some walking traffic and everything. So, but again, the primary example is, and some of the thing is, are you having a wedding or a birthday party where you can have someone cater? And the proposition that food trucks have given is, what's any different of me parking my food truck on that driveway and catering that, you know, that event on that person's private property? And that's
Right.
a lot of what I hear from the economic development side. And then I already kind of mentioned from the event side how that would be handled. But
Yeah. I mean, you know, to your point, in my neighborhood where we've seen this, it's foot traffic. You know, if you're having a block party, the idea is it's your neighbors. They're probably going to walk rather than get in their car and drive down two doors to go to the food truck. So
If they operated in a residential zone, could we just make it a requirement that they have to get an event permit?
that's actually something that Ann and I suggested, but there's like a lot of nuances, as was discussed with that Kevin and Mark and Tippy have already highlighted.
Oh, no, actually you can't. So if we allow it on private property, we can't require a permit or a site plan.
Right.
I suppose we could say it's not allowed on private property, or it's not allowed. Well, no, I don't think we could do that. I don't think we could differentiate in a residential zone. If it's allowed in a residential zone, it's allowed there's nothing we can do about it. We can't require a permit or any type of site plan. It's just allowed. It's presumed allowed.
So currently, the approval or disapproval is solely based on the zone. If it's allowed in the zone, it's allowed on any private property in that zone, and we can't regulate it beyond that.
Yeah. And, I think there's also a point to be made that I think the legislature, there's probably a lot of legislators that believe that this law allows it in residential zones. So that's one thing to think about as well. I mean, I think that's the direction of the legislature, that they want to allow these in residential zones. But yeah, we can leave it as it is, where it's not a permitted use, and that complies with the code. If you open the door and let them in, that's where our hands are tied quite a bit.
So, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong on this, at least with the way our current special event permit is set up, we can require the permit if like a little neighborhood block party or something that is on private property is then impacting and overflowing into the roads, or if they want to close a section of a road for a block party,
right,
we can require a special event permit. But if it's solely on the private property, we can't. So for example, right now, if from what I understand, is if a neighborhood wants to put together a block party and they do a special event permit and identify sections of road that they're gonna do that block party, my understanding is they could do something like that right now without having to change the code.
But it would have to be attached to an event where they're closing
a permitted event. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're opening the door there. If you allow it in a residential zone per special event permit, then they can come in under the private property provisions of the act and not ever be required to have a permit or business license with the city. So I think you're opening the door for that. And the council would just have to make that decision. If you're okay with that and that being a possibility, just realize that city staff really doesn't have any options. It can't enforce our zoning regulations because we allow it in residential zones. So that's the council's call on that.
Okay.
Stephen has his hand up, or is that no longer Stephen?
Oh, that was from a while ago. How do I put it down?
Councilmember Porter, you were talking about things that you wanted us to evaluate. Should this or should other sections of this be moving forward? Were there other items that you had?
No, that was it was mainly those two, the parking regulations and how prescriptive that was going to be, and then the question as to whether we're being too restrictive by including manholes and storm drain and deciduous trees and fire hydrants and all these other things that they can't park near, to the point where they can't park anywhere.
Right. So going back to one of the earlier questions that was asked, there are some other sections that don't deal with, say, food trucks. So if you go to 19605, there were some changes beyond that would be things that, again, would I think be beneficial if you're willing to approve those, and then table anything that was relative to the food truck items, if that was something. But again, the rest of these changes seemed to be fairly non-controversial from our perspective. But again, we would be happy to table those as well, unless you're comfortable going like 19.6 and beyond.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. There's these other changes are changes that I'm recommending. It turns out that, well, in practice, we've been following the state law, but our code it's been a little while since we've needed to clean this up. But the changes in 1906-05, 1909-08, 1912-02, 1912-05, and let's see, also 1914-06, 1914-07. There's been a need to change that code for quite some time based on state law that basically says we can't deny building and occupancy permits if a developer has posted a bond and those improvements aren't essential to meet the building and fire code. And so that's what those changes are geared towards. And then I noticed also in 1924, there was some language that was really confusing about our process for seeking review of a constitutional taking. And that's why I made those changes as well. So if you want to table the decision on the food truck,
just take those
I
sections.
recommend making a decision on those other amendments.
I'm good with everything else.
Yeah.
I have no questions.
Yeah, so my,
So
John?
if motion, just do 605 and subsequent.
so do you want a motion, Mayor?
I do.
Okay, I move to approve Code Amendment Title 19 City Initiated Ordinance 2035 from 1906 down, tabling the food truck changes until we get more clarity from the state legislature.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman Carn,
I'll second.
a second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion?
Are we okay with the definitional changes? I thought we were just talking specifically.
He said from 1906 down. So I think that would remove the definition changes.
Well, right, but are we not approving any of the definitional changes?
The definitional changes are really kind of tied to event permits, food carts, and food trucks, and they're almost part and parcel. So I think we would be comfortable not touching those at this point because, again, we start deleting and moving some of those other sections in the 1905 section.
Okay.
Okay, do a roll call then. Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Carn?
I'd like to see this come back.
Okay, I agree. We need to get it back. Hopefully, Chris and Mark, after you get a chance to talk with our legislators, will have better clarification or idea or direction. Okay, I will entertain a motion on the minutes from October 20th.
Move to approve.
I have a first from Councilman Carn,
Second.
second from Councilman Porter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on. Mark, do we have need for closed session?
No, we do not, Mayor.
Perfect. Then I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And David, thanks for managing such a large group with the youth council and that.
Right.
Anytime, all right, a little while.
It was nice to have a crowd.
Have a great night.
Thanks.